always keep up with Martin Luther King's age because I happen to be 3 months older than he. So I know that I was born in October 1928. But I wanted to tell you briefly about a part of his work that is rarely discussed. And I did participate in that part of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference program. Martin Luther King had what was called citizenship schools. They organized citizenship schools all over the South. The schools were led by a woman named Septima Clark. Septima Clark had organized black teachers in Charleston, South Carolina in the 1920s. She worked there for 40 years, and she belonged to the NAACP, and they fired her. She wouldn't give up her membership. So she went to the Highlander School in Tennessee, and she carried with her a curriculum that she and Esau Jenkins and Bernice Robinson had developed in the South Sea Islands off the coast of South Carolina. This was a literacy program, a way of teaching people about citizenship and how to vote and how to be a good citizen. The Highlander School adopted this curriculum, and Martin Luther King and the American Missionary Association took the program over, and they started implementing it all over the South. Dorothy Cotton said she was the leader of the citizenship schools from 1962 to 1967. She said wherever you saw an intense protest across whatever community you saw, the leaders had been educated, had been trained in the citizenship school. Now, I had a chance to go and be trained in the citizenship school. On the same weekend that Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner were missing, I took 15 students to Dorchester, Georgia, to be trained at Martin Luther King School. And it was a wonderful week when we saw where we had to sleep, when we saw what we had to eat. We almost felt like going back home. But there was so much spirit, there was so much enthusiasm, we soon forgot the crude quarters that we had to stay in. Everywhere, there were people there from Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, people who had fought the Klan up and down the streets in the churches, at their homes, and they were there to tell their story. Everybody was just so up. And the thing I remember most was the singing. Everywhere we went, there were freedom songs. If you look for me on the back of the bus and you don't see me nowhere, come on up to the front of the bus and I'll be riding up there. Everywhere, the songs just broke out on the porch, in the dining room, in the classrooms, all over the place. My students did not want to go home. They were crying when we left that place. And we went back to Halifax County, North Carolina. I started my literacy class because the idea was that you brought these people in and you taught them how to read and how to write, and you used political terms because they had taught us new words, like I had never heard about power structure before, but we learned habeas corpus. I didn't know of those things, but I was able to share it with people in my community. And we had a graduation ceremony, and these old people, some of them were almost as old as I am now, got certificates signed by Martin Luther King. So the citizenship program was kind of like what happens at POP. where Larry teaches us black history and tells us about political things, demystifies government. You see how much he knows about Martin Luther King. He's the best teacher I think I've sat under. He is an excellent teacher. So Huck is performing the work of the citizenship schools, and they were vital to the success of Martin Luther King. So I invite all of you to come to our meetings on Thursday night at Abyssinia Baptist Church. Am I telling it right?
Yes.
The Klan. Well, I was a teacher in a little town in North Carolina. I'd been there for 12 years. And my husband decided to run for the town council. No, as far as we knew, no black person had ever, am I standing in the front? No black person had ever held a political office in that town. Now, that's what we were told. About 20 years later, we found out that a black congressman had actually lived in our town. But by the time I grew up, everybody had forgotten that. But at any rate, people were very upset. You know, they put a big article in the newspaper and everybody was whispering and talking about it. And so, one night, a neighbor called and said, "Look out there in your backyard." And we all ran to the window, and the whole black backyard was lit up. And there was this cross that had been burned on our lawn. Well, it had the opposite effect of frightening everybody, because it made everybody mad.
That's right.
And we started taking carloads of people down to be registered to vote.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful, wonderful turnout of our community. Well, this just started it. My students started asking, why can't we sit downstairs in the theater? Why do we have to go upstairs in that little place they have upstairs? So one night, two of my students went down and asked the manager, can't we buy tickets and just sit downstairs? Because you had to buy your ticket, go outside, some outside steps, and go upstairs to this balcony. So the manager told them, I do this as a community service. If you don't like it, you just don't come. So the students came home, and the next day they were supposed to graduate from high school. But instead, we called Floyd McKissick, and he said, put a picket line in front of that theater. And that's what we did. And we picketed until it closed. They wouldn't integrate it, but they closed it down.
She was out there in the rain, in the snow. She was in our 381-day protest. She's been in our Justice Mondays protest, which is going on now for 90 weeks. She's been a steadfast supporter. She is our bridge, one of our bridges, from the civil rights movement to the current struggle for justice. And I want y'all to give a warm round of applause to Sister Dr. Willa Cofield. Come on in, girl. I want you to say a few words. I didn't just call you. Let her come through here so she can say a few words. She's looking forward to her 90th birthday next October. Come on. Make way for Dr. Willa Cofield. Dr. Willa Cofield. Dr. Willa Cofield.
Well, thank you, my sisters and brothers in the struggle. It's been a long time since I first took up a sign and picketed and joined the protest back in 1963. Find an organization, if you don't have one, and join it. An organization that's struggling and protesting And that's what I did. And when I came to New Jersey, I was at Livingston College, and I was a part of the student movement there. We had all kinds of really fierce battles in those days. And then the Black Women's History Conference, I was able to help get that started with Dr. Shirley Cathy. And Dr. Cathy just died last week and will be memorialized next month. But she and I started the Black Women's History Conference, and it went on for 20 years. We did conferences throughout the state. And then I went on a wonderful trip to Washington to ask for reparations that was sponsored by the People's Organization for Progress. And I said, I want to join this organization. And that was in, I think, about 2001. So I have been proud to be part of this militant, wonderful, never give up, out there in the rain or the snow or whatever, the struggle. Yes, ma'am. And so I expect to be here, until I can't go anymore. And just say, let's all work together. Let's never give up. Amen. We don't care, what happens on the other side. We will never give up. We will always struggle. We will always resist.
Dr. Willa Cofield. Dr. Willa Cofield. "89 years in the struggle." How many of us will be able to say that when we cross the finish line? Amen. That we were there for 89 years. Amen. Klan in Enfield, North Carolina. How she stood against the white supremacists and the racists who fought tooth and nail to keep in place the system of racial apartheid that existed here in America. And I was so lucky to come to meet Willa Cofield. And we are so lucky that she joined the People's Organization for Progress, but she didn't even tell her story, how she lost her job, and her husband lost her job, and how they had to leave North Carolina, like Claudette Colvin had to leave Alabama, and Rosa Parks had to leave Alabama. She sacrificed. We are able to stand here liberated from legal apartheid because of Willa Cofield and women like Willa Cofield.
After the March on Washington, we had a big fight in the streets of Enfield with the police. And they brought out the fire trucks and washed people off the sidewalks. All the people in the movement were in jail, and the whole community was out. Well, as a result of all of this activity, my job, I'd been teaching at the high school for 12 years, suddenly I became not a good teacher. They told me I was insubordinate to the principal, and they fired me. And the day that we went into court, and we had really good civil rights attorneys, we went into court 30 days after the day they had told me I didn't have a job. The day that the suit was filed, a 17-foot cross was burned in front of my house. Wow. And it was 17 feet tall. Wow. And it was terrible. But the fight went on in court. I got a lot of help from people all over the country. And in 3 years' time, my job was restored. it is said, the NEA says, that suit saved the jobs of 40,000 teachers in the South, because school boards knew that black teachers were in those classrooms sending those children out into the streets, and they were getting ready to fire them wholesale. So that is something that has changed my life, has moved me from North Carolina to New Jersey, but I am still with the people. I am still struggling.
All right, Willa. Woo!
And I hope that is going to always be the case. Power to the people. Thank you.
Power to the people.
Give a big hand, Willa Cofield.
And I seen this little old lady come into my house. She came over there. I said, okay, great, we're gonna have a good meeting up here. You know, about 10 people came in there, and I will never forget, brothers and sisters, the love and the respect that I get from Dr. Cofield. See, I don't have a file to read about Dr. Cofield, so I come and speak from my heart, just about how good she is, what she's done for me. Because through Dr. Cofield, I'm really 5'4", but I feel like I'm 10 feet tall sometimes. Because sometimes the work that she does and she allows me to do. And you know how there's sometimes you're talking to people, but she always knows the right things to say to me, to make me feel good about me. You know, about little old me, 5'4" inches tall. But I feel like a giant sometimes. So Dr. Cofield has done some amazing work since she's been here in the People's Organization for Progress. One time we were marching in Plainfield, and we were marching on the streets, and we didn't have a permit. A lot of the other women stayed back at the Quaker Meeting House. That's what we were going to march to. They stayed there. But Dr. Cofield didn't do that. She came out there and marched with us, even though we may have been arrested, even though they were threatening us that something could happen. But she was right there with us every step of the way. So I'd like to just read this to her. People's Organization for Progress Women's History Month Freedom Fighter Award presented to Willa Cofield, an African-American woman history maker, and in recognition of your contributions to the struggle for civil and human rights, for the emancipation of women and the liberation of our people. Power to the people, March 27, 2014. Thank you.
It is a real honor to receive this plaque. It is a real honor to be recognized by people that you know, and people that you love, that people that you have such deep respect for. The People's Organization for Progress is the best run, the best organized group of freedom fighters that I've ever encountered. So I know that they know what a freedom fighter looks like. I have, as Steve didn't tell you my age, and maybe I won't tell you either. But I think I'm the oldest member in the People's Organization for Progress. And there's one person who is a year younger than I, who is sitting over there, Jackie. Jackie's a shame. And I love the idea of being called a freedom fighter because it puts me in the class with people like Ella Baker. And Ella Baker was from the same county that I'm from. But I didn't know that until I was almost middle-aged. And when I found out that Ella Baker was, I reached out to her, and I actually had a chance to meet her and to talk to her many, many times. So thank you for putting me in that category. I don't know whether many of you know that I used to work in women's history when I was in the Department of Education, and I love women's history, so I love having this particular program recognizing women. And I would like to accept this award that you're giving me in the name of two of the women who struggled in Enfield, North Carolina. Most of you have probably never heard of Enfield, North Carolina. It's a little town in northeastern North Carolina. It's where I lived and where we put up an intense battle against racism and segregation back in 1963 to 1965. And there were two women, particularly one who was my good close friend who died about 4 years ago. Her name was Lily Mason Smith. And Lily was our Rosa Parks. When we had protests in Enfield, we had a bench downtown that old white men sat on and smoked, and no black people were permitted to sit on that bench. That was the way it was. When we had protests downtown, particularly with our young people, Lily Mason Smith would drape her arms over the back of this bench, cross her legs, and sit and look and say, "I dare you put a hand on anyone." The other person actually lives across, somewhere near West Kenny, East Kenny, across Broad Street. Her name is Doris Daniels. And Doris was one of the young women in Enfield who in a demonstration was dragged 2 blocks by police. I mean, literally in the street. She bears the scars on her knees to this day and thrown into jail. So I would like to remember those two young women. The other women that I want to point to are the women of POP. The women of the People's Organization of who are the backbone of this organization, who work so hard. If you've ever been to our meetings and if you've heard the minutes read, or if you have heard the treasurer's report given, or if you have heard the corresponding secretary, if you have been to any of our protests and you see who's there, our women are so strong and so dedicated. So I want to recognize their contributions. The last group I want to accept this award in their name is just our Black women who keep the world, keep the skies from falling. Where would we be if we did not have our women who get up every morning and fix the breakfast and get the kids ready for school, sometimes take them to the bus stop, sometimes take them to school, who go to work, maybe more than one job, who come home from work and cook dinner and see the kids get their homework done and put them to bed and maybe get a little break at the end of the day. And then they get up the next morning and they do it the same thing. I have worked with a woman who says that is the most important work that gets done. The work that ordinary women do to keep families going. Think about our raising the young, bearing the children, raising the young, taking care of the old, the sick, and the dying. Our women deserve. They deserve what we deserve, more than above. It ought to be women's day year round. So, thank you again.
live the spirit of Enfield law.